Welcome everyone to this week's episode of Finding Your Freedom podcast, and today I am joined again by my coach Victoria Kleinsman, and we're going to talk today about some of the differences between recovery when you are on your own, like I was, and recovery when you maybe live with your family or a partner, and so what the differences are in the experience that you might have. And the reason I wanted to do this is because I think sometimes we think the grass is greener, that someone else might have a better experience of recovery depending on what else is going on in their life. I know I sometimes wish that I had somebody with me, but I'm also aware that sometimes that causes issues of its own. And I think with Victoria, you did, I think, your kind of successful recovery with your partner, didn't you? I think your partner were you living together at the time?
Yeah, and we'll go into it obviously, but it's interesting that you said that we think the grass is greener, because when I was just prepping some pros and cons for this episode, I thought to myself, and I smiled because I thought I know it was exactly as it was supposed to be, but I kind of was like, I kind of wished, in quotes, I don't know if that's the right word, that I was on my own to recover. So we can go into that. So I think that's really worth stating, that the grass isn't always greener, and whoever you're with or whoever you're not with is exactly who you're supposed to be with or who you're supposed to not be with for your personal recovery, because each brings its own challenge.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I'm going to start with probably the biggest thing. It was kind of probably my biggest battle, I think, and obviously it's a big battle for anyone in recovery, which is control. So obviously a lot of us in recovery, we want to control something, and we end up using food and our bodies, even if it's not that's really the problem. And we talked many times in my coaching sessions that I liked control of everything. It wasn't just in my eating disorder. I'm designed that way. I think that I like to control everything. It's kind of my safe place. And of course, my eating disorder was just a reflection of that, and a way I could really kind of enforce that control when other things were kind of spiraling and a little bit stressful. And so for me then, I knew it was probably going to be one of the hardest things for me to let go of in my eating disorder. And I kind of thought it was my biggest challenge. And I guess for me, the problem living on my own was that even though I was supposed to kind of let go of that control over food and calories and meal planning and all of that, I also was completely responsible for everything I did around food. So I had to buy food, I had to cook food, I had to decide when I was going to eat food, I had to decide how much food I was going to eat. And so I really struggled with still having to have some control over it, and kind of wished I could, if I had someone with me, I could just say, you deal with the food, and that will make my recovery easier.
Oh yeah, I totally get that. And I'm going to go to my notes because I've written this in a different way somewhere. So the pro that I wrote to speak to what you've just spoke to is there's a few things. There's support from the other person, and in my case it was my now husband. So when he knows that I'm supposed to be eating and I'm sat there like kind of sat on my hands, like avoiding and making all excuses that, oh, I just need to go, he's like, no, we're going to eat. And I'm like, oh fuck. So that support in real time is helpful when you notice yourself avoiding, but ultimately recovery is your own responsibility anyway. No one else can obviously force you, but it is helpful and gives you that extra bit of accountability if someone's kind of watching you from a non-annoying but loving place. And that what was really helping me in terms of when he ate and what he ate, I would be able to look at what a normal eater did, because thankfully he has a very normal, healthy, free relationship with food. Sadly, not everyone has. So if someone is in recovery and they have a partner or a friend or whatever, I'm not saying that they have a normal relationship with food. Hopefully they will, but we don't know. But Wouter has. So it was really helpful for me to be like, oh, well, like he's eating again like an hour and a half after breakfast. That must be kind of normal, so let me do the same. And then now he's having lunch, and the eating disorder was like, how the fuck can he be eating again? Like, he's only eaten like an hour and a half ago, and then he had breakfast before that, but he modelled like normal eating, so that was really helpful. That's a massive pro. in my opinion, from living with someone who has a normal relationship with food in recovery.
Yeah, I found that when, like I say, I was mainly on my own, but when I did, like you say, I kind of went out for food and stuff, it it takes your, and as well, it takes your focus, as well as seeing how a normal person eats, so that they don't have those strange habits. I think things like I picked up, like um, eating things with a teaspoon,
Oh, I did that all the time, and
yeah,
it was this same teaspoon.
yeah. And like you say, I don't know. I mean, you may know better than me. I think that was because food was, I ate so little food, but when it was when food was allowed, I wanted to make it last as long as possible.
Oh
And
yeah, so the little
I couldn't understand people who ate
utensils.
fast, who didn't seem to taste or enjoy food, because I used to think, well, if I could eat as much as you, I would savor every mouthful of that.
Oh my God, so much shit. I remember like I would allow myself one piece of flapjack a day. And I remember this bar of flapjack that would probably take me like 1 minute to eat now, and I would enjoy it. I would take the tiniest, minusculest, tiny, and I would chop it into the tiniest, tiniest little pieces. Like the weird food rituals that I used to have, same plate that had to be small, same bowl, same spoon that had to be small, like almost like baby-sized cutlery
Yeah,
because of that exact reason. It's like it's kind of trying to make it the pleasure last as long as possible because that's when you're allowing yourself. So you can almost get pleasure because you're allowing, but after that, then you go starving again until you allow yourself the next time.
yeah. And I had a flatmate at one point, and yeah, I don't even think he chewed. He literally didn't chew. But like,
Inhaled.
and I'd say to him, "Did you even taste that? Like, did you?" I used to be fascinated by this
Mm.
inhaling of food, and I was like, "Did you even taste that or enjoy it?" But to him, eating was just, he ate because he needed to eat and he was hungry. And even though I'm not saying he didn't enjoy it, but he
Mm.
didn't overthink it. He didn't have to sit and think about and taste and all of that, because if he wanted some more or he was still hungry or whatever, he would just have some more. Whereas with me, I just thought it used to fascinate me that he didn't have to kind of go through that process of enjoying every bit, because I was thinking, like you say, with me, it's like, well, I can't believe you just inhaled that pizza, because if I just had that pizza, I'm not having a pizza for another 6 months.
Oh
So
yeah,
that pizza's going to last.
yeah. And talking of like Wouter helping me around food, you mentioned about you having to buy the food, cook the food, plan the food. I was so, this is a massive pro for me. I I don't know if I still have because I haven't had to do it, but I had like PTSD. Like I know I'm using that word in I guess not as a serious way, but I had PTSD from planning food, planning diets, buying food, cooking it. So every time I would sit, even in recovery, and like as I was gaining more freedom, I would be so anxious of being like, oh my God, like I need, like it would just be this huge thing where it was just food prep, like a normal person. But for me, it was just too overwhelming. So he actually took responsibility for what we're going to eat. He knows what I like. He would buy it and would have it delivered, and then he would cook it. So that was a massive pro that he was happy to take that responsibility. And I did notice in recovery, I'd be hanging around the kitchen being like, how much fucking oil and butter is he putting in there? And I'll be trying to be like, nope, just like leave the kitchen alone. So I did have a lot of feelings and anger towards him if I saw him like just aimlessly doing this with olive oil. But it was good for my recovery because I let go of that control and then I allowed it to serve me. I think that's
Yeah.
important because if people are still trying to take the control back, it's not going to work. If you want to recover, you need to find out the dynamic that's going to work and then do what you'll say you're going to do. And that was really hard for me, but it was really helpful.
Yeah. With me, I think I even talked to you on some of my coaching sessions, because I live in central London. When I was in Manchester, I used to do a big shop. That's what you do in
Mm.
Manchester. You take your car to the retail park and you go
Yeah.
once a week and you do the big shop. And I moved to London and couldn't get my head around the fact that people used to just shop for every day in a
Yeah.
local Tesco Express. And of course, the control person in me couldn't do that, because what if there was a day I couldn't get to the shop or anything? So I still wanted to have my once weekly shop, which meant doing it online. And
Mm.
I found that really challenging, because it's almost hard. It's almost, I think, it's easier to probably to be less controlling about buying your food if you walk around a supermarket and you just see something that you want. I kind of didn't really have, you don't do that on online shopping. Otherwise, or you could sit there for hours and hours browsing, do you know what I mean? Browsing aisles and trying not to look at the calorie information.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really struggled with that. And I think you said to me, because there isn't a supermarket that far, but as much as I could, to go and actually physically shop without a list and just actually just walk around and say, oh, that looks nice, that looks nice. But I really struggled with that when I did it online.
Yeah.
And I find online shopping really boring as well.
Yeah, because you've not got the smells and the sights and I think you
Nothing
sharing.
tempts you. The picture of something online doesn't tempt you the same way as it does if you walk
Yes.
past it.
Especially because supermarkets are smart, and I love this about supermarkets. Most of the ones you walk in England anyway, they smell of fresh cookies and especially if they've got a bakery section, they do it on purpose and they place the bakery in certain aspects of the building to get the most buys as possible. So you saying that it was a change for you to go from that big shop to like daily shopping in your recovery. I think if someone, and like I said, Wouter just took responsibility, so I didn't have this problem. But if someone is with a partner and they want to do that, because I think that's a lot more intuitive, if possible, to just be like, okay, what do I fancy today and tomorrow, and then just buy it for the day or the next day. That probably won't work with a family or a partner. So I think without realizing it, that could be a con. Living with someone else, you haven't got that freedom perhaps to just be like, I don't know what I want for dinner, I'm just going to go and see after work or whatever.
Yeah, definitely something that's easy to do, like you say, when you're on your own. I literally only had to think about myself, so there you go, massive pro. I don't have to think while I'm thinking about what I'm going to eat and all the rest of it. I don't have to factor in that I also I have kids and a husband, and depending on who does the cooking and whatever, then I didn't have to factor anything else except myself. And because I took some time off work, I literally had that time then to, not every day, but most days, go out, have a wander around, choose what I wanted that day, what I felt like, instead of that kind of planning. Now I'm fine going back to my online shopping, and kind of, at the weekend having a mooch around Marks and Spencer's food hall and seeing what I
Oh,
fancy.
the best. The Marks and Spencer's cookies, I miss them so much.
Yeah. So I think anyone who's listening, if you can go out to a supermarket and try and be a little bit spontaneous, I think that will probably help you earlier on than maybe doing online shopping. Like you say, maybe not so much if you've got a family, but it's like you say, the just seeing the food, letting it tempt you, getting the smells, all of those things are probably an easier way to kind of start letting go of that control than if you're doing your kind of online shopping.
I agree.
So that was and the other thing that I did was that once a week I decided I'd buy kind of food, and one day a week I wouldn't buy any food and I would leave it up to Deliveroo. So I would have one day a week where I was making sure that I had at least one meal a week where I didn't know anything that was in it. So I would try not to look at calories on the back of packets if I bought something, but at least once a week ordering food in and just picking it off a menu. And if I couldn't pick it off a menu, I would literally send a message to the girls on my group WhatsApp and say, right, I'm going to go with whatever the most votes, Indian, Italian, Chinese, whatever. And so if I couldn't decide, I even let them decide. So I had no control, literally, apart from paying for the food.
That's a great way of doing it, and it just shows the way you're speaking. And of course I know this. When you decided to recover, you committed. It's not to say that when you commit everything's just easy, because it's not. It's not to say you didn't struggle with a few things, but when that commitment is there and that decision is made, that no matter what it takes, I'm going to recover and I'm going to figure it out with help, the right help. That's a prime example to take the responsibility or the pressure away, to just ask your friends on a WhatsApp group and be like, right, whatever votes the most, I'm going to get for myself.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it's easy. It was easy for me on those days I was having takeaway to go, oh, like you say, the eating disorder voice comes in and it's like, oh, you won't know how many calories are in it and all of the rest of it. And I could then almost get to the point where I would overthink, do I then go into the headspace of, well, what kind of takeaway is a healthier kind of a takeaway? So I just had to stop all of that. I just had to let someone else decide. Ladies, if you were getting a takeaway tonight, what do you fancy?
Chinese.
And, a group of people who literally, what do you fancy right now? They didn't have to think any more than what would they have right now, and that was what I would have right now.
Exactly. So that leads me to just bring up naturally the permission that we don't need, but we kind of do need. And
Yeah.
I know coaching like gives a lot of this, which was why I had a coach as well. But your friends almost gave you the permission to just choose a takeaway, like a quote unquote normal eater. Whereas watching my husband just eat like normally gave me permission to do the same. And I remember this is kind of the opposite of what most people might think, find surprising in anorexia recovery, especially. But I remember like watching him, and let's say he was full, he would leave like two mouthfuls on the plate, and I'll be like, there's no, now I do the same if I'm full, but in recovery even I was like, there's no fucking way, why would someone all you have to do is literally take two more mouthfuls and the
Yeah.
plate's clean. But we were taught that you have to finish your plate, and also there's that past restriction fear of like, oh my god, there's never going to be enough, so even if I'm full I'm gonna, so even like a normal thing such as being like, you know what, I'm done, I'm full, and there's one chip left on the plate and it's just going to go in the bin, like I couldn't get my head around that before.
No, me neither. No, I couldn't. Like you say, it's. I don't know if with me it was. I don't know when I'm going to have a chip again,
Hmm.
so I'm not leaving one. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I didn't understand that. I didn't understand how those people who naturally would just kind of like be having the most delicious meal, and then three quarters of the way through would just say, like, oh, like knife and fork, and kind of push it away
Mm.
and carry on. Where I'd just be sat staring at what they'd
Yeah.
left,
Me too.
and they
And
kind
then
of like,
now I just listen to my body, and and sometimes, especially with desserts, I am very aware that I'm finishing it when I'm kind of had enough, just because I want to. It's habit, and I like the taste of it, and I'm fine with that because it's just food. But the difference is now I can just leave something without making it mean anything. It's not a good thing that I've left something. I'm just like, yeah, I'm done, or I'm done, but I'm still going to keep eating because it's pleasurable. So that's what I'm going to do.
yeah. I remember you told me we talked at the beginning of recovery, and for me, because I had very low body weight, and you obviously encouraged me to eat as much as possible whenever, and with that minimum of the three meals, the snacks in between, and the desserts. And for such a long time, I, well, I'm kind of a year in now, and I would have all of that because I was still hungry enough for all of that. And it's actually only now, probably coming on to a year, where I get to the point where it gets to the dessert, and it depends what it is. So if it's something I really, really want, yes, I'll have it when I'm full. But actually now, I've kind of got to that point where it's like I trust myself to say I don't want that because I'm full, not because I'm restricting.
Yeah, and that's freedom, right? Because
Yeah.
freedom is having the freedom to say yes and no.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
important. Whereas a lot of people's eating disorder now will be latching on to what I've just said and being like, oh, freedom also means saying no. Yeah, the freedom to say yes and no, not the permission to say no when you actually want more and you want to keep eating and you're afraid about it. There's a big difference. But freedom is that it works both ways.
Yeah. And it took me a lot, like I say, it took me a year to fully trust myself, I guess, that I was doing it for the right reasons. Because
Mm.
prior to that, I still think that when I would kind of question the thought would automatically come into my head, that I'll have eaten less calories today.
Yeah.
Whereas now the decision is literally, have I got any room for that? Do I really want it or don't I? And if I don't, I'll have it tomorrow.
Yes.
So,
Isn't it cool? Like, people ask, how do I stop counting calories and all these things? A lot of coaches focus on the tangible steps on how to stop doing a behavior, which is important. But when you eradicate the root cause of needing to count calories in the whole first place, the behavior falls away. Because if it means nothing to you and your worth, no matter how many calories you have or how many you don't, or if you gain weight or if you don't, then the behavior of counting calories is so easy to let go of. But if you're trying to stop counting calories, but your body weight means your worth or your happiness and everything's tied into that, the behavior is going to be really hard to stop, because there's a part of you that needs that behavior to feel safe. So when, like now, calories mean shit to me. Like I have no clue. I mean, my brain can remember if I want it to. So if I was like, oh, today I've had this, it was probably this much. But it means nothing to me, nothing. So my brain just doesn't do that anymore, because why would I? There's no reason.
yeah. I think when I started coaching with you, because there was a bit of a delay between me first contacting you and then our first session,
Mm.
and so I decided to kind of grab the bull by the horns and start to increase my food intake prior to our first coaching session, because I think I've said this to you before, I kind of knew from the first conversation we had that I'm like, even though there was going to be a little gap because I was still working, that I still felt brave enough to start increasing my food prior to coaching. But of course I did that in a way that was very controlled. So I just on purpose ate more calories every day, which was a big step, but I still knew how many calories I ate. And I think I said to you at one point about calories, and I said, well, I think, you know, the reason I kind of count the calories is so that I don't go less than, you know, so I've increased them and I don't want to start going less. And you said to me, well, it kind of doesn't matter if you go less because they don't mean anything. So as long as you're eating enough and when you want to and what you want to, some days you'll eat less calories and some days you'll eat more calories. Like the calories don't matter. So it kind of, you know, it kind of burst my bubble about why I should still have to count calories, because it actually didn't matter how many I was eating as long as I was eating what I wanted and when I wanted.
That's the most important, because people's eating disorders will latch onto that and be like, oh, so it's okay, permission to eat less if I don't want to. Now, what you did, Tara, is you gave yourself permission with my support to eat unrestrictedly and follow your mental and physical hunger. If you're not willing to do that, you can't just eat less because you don't feel like it, because that's the eating disorder, not feeling like it. So if you trust yourself enough, or I guess a better question is if you're committed enough to follow your hunger unrestrictedly, you don't need to count calories to make sure you're eating enough, because your body will tell you. As long as you're following your body, and that includes mental hunger, you will be eating the exact amount for you. And that's why meal plans can be helpful depending on the person. I don't encourage them, but I have used them in my coaching if necessary. But then that's something then to then move away from as well, because that becomes the safety net of allowance and permission. There's no freedom in that either.
Yeah. So my next kind of pro and con was about motivation and encouragement. So obviously if you're on your own a lot of the time, then you don't have that kind of constant somebody cheering you on, I guess. And I then had to motivate myself every single day. So from the morning I got up till when I went to sleep. And actually, when I managed to achieve that, I felt really, really powerful. I was like, I don't need, like literally I've got it in me. I can completely motivate myself out, you know, to do whatever I need to do to get out of this eating disorder. But then on the hard days, like it just would have been really nice to have someone go on, you can do it. You know, that kind of 10 seconds where you stand looking at the thing that you want to eat and you start to let the thoughts in. And I used to think, oh, I just wish somebody would be like, it's okay, you can do it, or just to give you a hug and go, it's fine, you're doing really well. And so I think for people who are on their own, if they've not, firstly my advice is to share about your eating disorder with somebody, because you know I hadn't shared anything about my eating disorder with anyone until I chose to go into recovery. And so I think you need to try and find your source of motivation and encouragement somewhere, even if they are not physically with you all the time. So for me, I did, at one point when I was going to, I think, what was it? There was a takeaway meal, even though I'd done takeaways and stuff, and I can't remember what it was, but there was a takeaway meal, Indian food, I think it was Indian food, that I hadn't done yet, and for some reason it still frightened me. And me and a friend had a virtual dinner.
Oh.
so that like it was just a big, you know, it was just something. It was a bit like a fear food, and so we ate together. And so I I just found that bit of encouragement and motivation like really helpful, rather than me sitting and doing that kind of on my own. And so I just found that really useful. And did you find then that extra motivation helped you?
It did. It's that permission thing that we don't need, but at the same time we do need it from someone else, because it gives you that permission to eat when you want. Like when you just said, when you're staring at something and then you just wanted someone to go eat it, that's exactly, I literally had an image of when I was doing just that. I opened the drawer and I was looking at the chocolate, And I was like, there's so many things like, I want it, but I shouldn't really have it. Like all the things that we all know that goes on in our head and in recovery. And then Valsa just said, do you want it? And I went, yeah. And he said, well, just eat it then. And I'm like, okay. So that was helpful. And also the hugs. Oh my God. I'm so glad you brought it up. I have got that in my notes. When you just need, I've put in prose, the second one I put, someone is there to hug you and be with you through the difficulties. When all you need is not a motivational speech, not a push, just someone to give you a hug and for you to cry. And that's everything. So I'm so glad that I did have that, and not everyone has that.
Oh, I just think, if I was Prime Minister, I would make it mandatory for people to, there would be a way that everybody would get hugged at least once a day.
Yeah.
I just it's that kind of, like you say, it's almost no matter what people say to you sometimes, because like you say, with words, we go into our mind and we try and apply logic and everything. With a hug, you don't need words, do you? It literally is that. So I really missed that. So when I did then see friends and see family, I just made the most of that, that kind of, that physical touch and that hug. And even though it's not the same as in the moment, I do think it's a benefit. It must be a huge benefit if you're with someone who can just do that on the days that it's tough.
It really is. So I'm so grateful I had that. And then the second best thing to that is a dog. And you'll know this. I know Alfie's really small. My dog's huge, so he gives the best hugs. Literally, he's like a cuddle bear. But the second best is an animal. Because I remember, this is a bit of body image stuff now. I remember, when I was really struggling with my body image to the point where, I guess I may as well talk about this because I'm kind of naturally going into this. One of the cons that I wrote down was, with being with someone in recovery, was not having the space, the physical and emotional space, to get over all my body image stuff by being by myself. I had that added pressure from someone who loved me there. So every time I got out of the shower, I'd quickly put everything, a towel up to here so he couldn't see me. And every time I heard him come upstairs and I was in the bedroom getting dressed, I'd quickly I was panicking that he would see my body. And then when my dog saw me, I was just even though I had the same sensation, even though it was an animal, my shame ran that deep. I was almost oh my God, I'm exposed to my dog. But he doesn't care. So even though it's an animal and not a human, even the presence of an animal seeing you in your most vulnerable state, that was me naked, that kind of is healing in a way. But it was so hard to do my body image work and self-love work around body acceptance when I had an active sexual romantic partner. That was so hard. And that's when the amount of times I was do you know what, I just wish I was by myself so I could recover and just focus on me and my recovery and my changing body that even I'm not used to, let alone someone. And what if he doesn't love me anymore? What if he sees a weight gain is disgusting? What if he doesn't find me attractive? All of that was so much pressure for me.
Yeah. Just going back to the dog thing, actually, because I didn't have that normal example of watching a normal person eat, I used to watch the dog. Because dogs will, like you say, they don't think about it at all. They've got no sense of body image. I used to watch how excited he would be for his food. As soon as I open the right cupboard, they know, don't they? And I just used to watch, and I used to think, at some point, I just want to have that kind of joy around opening a cupboard and having the same joy that dog has. It's just, I'm hungry and I want food, and it's the best part of the day. I used to love watching him because it's the best part of his day.
And when he's eaten and his belly's full and he's just sprawling all over the place, he's not being I need a pillow to hide my full belly.
Yeah, no, it's legs back and Mum, can you touch and scratch my belly? Yeah, I know what you mean.
So we can learn so much from animals and babies. Obviously I have my baby now. She does not give a fuck about what her belly looks like when it's sticking all out dead cute in the bath. She's just being in her body,
Yeah, I know. Oh, yeah. So my dog was a massive help, and like you said, it's and I know that everyone can go out and get a dog, but if you can have, for me, it was a replacement of that physical contact, because even though it wasn't with a person, like you say, I still had a dog to snuggle up to at night. So
Yeah.
that
I
made
think what
things.
we're saying here is like what you said, even though it wasn't in the moment, it's still important. I know that eating disorder like wants you to isolate yourself, and sometimes you do feel like you want to isolate yourself because you're trying to figure out who the fuck you are without this eating disorder, and especially if your coping mechanism is just to pull away and just to cope yourself, like mine was. But it is important to push yourself to connect with other people. You don't even have to meet friends and be like, I'm in recovery and it's really hard. Ideally, you do that, but you just need to connect with another person and
Yeah.
just, yeah, have that connection of like human to human. I think it's so key. So if people can lovingly push themselves, even if they don't feel like it, you will feel better afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, my eating disorder thrived on the fact that I lived alone.
Yeah.
When you're on your own and you know that nobody sees the madness, so nobody, like I was very underweight, so I think people knew there was something wrong, but nobody actually was picking up on how bad it had got. I didn't have to hide it from anyone, so my eating disorder loved the fact that I lived alone.
Oh,
It really
the
did.
funny thing is, in my top, when I first started prepping for this podcast, the top pro is you can't hide away, and the top con is you can't hide away. So
Yeah.
it works both ways. Obviously, for recovery, you can't hide away. So exactly what you said, all of the shit I was doing that was disordered, I could hide some of it, and I did until I was fully ready to recover. I hid like a lot of it, but you can't hide all of it. And so when you commit and you've got the other person who knows what you're doing, you can't hide shit, and that's the best and worst thing to happen to you in
Yeah.
recovery. So you could you could do all your weird shit and no one would even know.
Yeah.
So it took a lot of balls for you to be like, I'm not doing this weird shit, even though no one's going to know about it. Apart from your coach, me, hi, like I knew about it. So that helped. Coaching does help, obviously, massively.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I just, like you say, I found any way that I could. I, like you say, with the encouragement and motivation, I think I realised, and I said this to you during our coaching, that I didn't realise how visual a person I was. So I had things stuck all over the cupboards.
Yeah.
So it might be something you said in our session that I would write down, or something I'd read, or something I'd heard in a podcast, and things like that. So I would also just surround myself with visual things that were just in my eye line, that were just there reminding me, you can do
Yeah.
this. Remember who the fuck you are. All of these things that were just like
Yeah.
silent encouragement, but were better than nothing.
Yeah, and again, you were taking charge of your recovery, so you're doing everything you could. You weren't like, oh, well, it's really hard and I'm on my own, so I'll just use it as an excuse to. No, you were like, no, this is really hard, and what can I do to support myself in this?
Yeah.
That says everything. So
And I
I'm just
think if you
looking
are
through my list
looking,
as well as you're continuing to, if I've missed anything there.
yeah, I think if you're lucky enough to work with a coach, I think it wasn't necessarily so much about food, but I did at one point ask you to record me a voice note. I think it was on something a little bit different, something
Yeah.
something I was struggling with, boundaries and work, and I knew that I felt I was going to struggle in when I went back to work with kind of my boundaries, and I asked you to record me a little voice note. So if you are lucky enough to work with a coach or a therapist, or even if you need to get it from a friend, and
Yeah.
you actually need to physically hear somebody's voice, just those words of encouragement. It's not about permission, like you say, we've got permission anyway. But if you want motivation and encouragement, you literally need to hear somebody's voice. And in
Yeah.
that moment, I found that helpful for me, just to, as if somebody's there, but they're not there.
Yeah, just to help you veer back on the path that you know you want to be on. That can
Yeah,
be really helpful.
yeah,
And looking at so I put in the pros, recovering with someone, with a partner, you kind of, I don't want to say you have to, but you're given so many opportunities to learn how to be vulnerable and receive love. So
yeah,
vulnerability for me, this was the old me. I had a story that it meant weakness. If I was not strong and just getting on with it, it meant I was weak and pathetic and all of those things. So I remember the first time like I fully just completely let myself open up to Wouter, and I was crying so hard I couldn't speak. And I think in the podcast we did together, me and Wouter, it's not that far back on my podcast, he said to me that was the strongest thing he'd ever seen me do. And ironically at the time I thought I was the most weakest, pathetic person ever, and he saw the complete opposite. So
yeah,
being with someone in recovery, all the highs and the lows, you kind of have to be vulnerable. And the hardest part, apart from the vulnerability, which I now find very easy, is to receive his love. Now, I've always said that we can only receive love from others to the same extent of that which we love ourselves. So let's say I loved myself 20% when I met him, and he loved me 100%. I could only receive 20% of his 100% love, because it all happens from within. So the more I was recovering, the more my self-worth and self-love was increasing, let's say 60%, and he was still giving me this 100. I knew, like intuitively, unconsciously, that there was more that he was giving me that I wasn't allowing myself open enough to feel. And I know this is a bit hard to say, but unconsciously, I just opened myself up energetically to allowing him to love me and to receive that. And that can only happen in a relationship. And so that for me was a big catalyst for my recovery of like lovability and worthiness, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, like you say, I think we talked about this as well. I talked about the fact that I'd completely stopped looking for love and dating, all those things, in my eating disorder, because I knew firstly I didn't want to get found out. If, all, like you say, all the craziness that was going on. And secondly, I knew that I would in no way be the best version of myself, and that wasn't how I wanted to go into a relationship. I wanted to go into a relationship where I was going to enjoy it and go out for the spontaneous meal and not be having to hide things and not be conscious about my body and all of those things. But it's interesting still, when I now think of doing that and now, trying to meet somebody, I still, I don't know, because I've not tried it yet, but I wonder if how vulnerable now I would be. And, like I say, because I assumed in my eating disorder, like you say, all the things, I'm unlovable, I'm not attractive, I'm this, I'm not that, and I don't feel that way anymore. But it's interesting to see how I'd approach that now with someone new, because like you say, I want to be able to fully accept that somebody loves me completely just for me, as I am.
Well, it would be a great opportunity, because shit will come up, not like it would have done in the past, because you've done a lot of healing work, but then the next level will begin, because when we have a relationship, especially an intimate one, oh my God, it's like the most perfect, brutal mirror ever, because it's showing you, not necessarily showing you through them seeing it, but within yourself, like what your insecurities are, what you're being invited to look at and to work on. So when you feel ready, stuff will come up. But if we look at it from a place of like, ooh, ouch, okay, that's like, let's look at that then. Like, let me just like kind of go and work with that and what needs to be healed here, and what is kind of, it's always a positive if you see it that way, but you won't feel like you did before. But there will be some stuff where you're like, oh, I didn't realise that was still hanging around. Let me do something with that.
Yeah.
Positive.
My next heading was emotions. So, again, double-edged. With me, I had days when I was angry, when I cried a lot, when I just complete despair, frustration, all of those things. And I didn't have to, because I was on my own, I guess I didn't have to impact anyone else with those. So if I had children or I had a partner, I used to think, well, just talking about, like you say, the best version of yourself. During my recovery, I would have thought that at times somebody would probably see the worst of me, because all those emotions had to come out, and some of them were not pretty at all. And so I think for me, it was a bit of a pro that I could just deal with all that on my own and not impact other people. But on the downside of that, as we've just said, sometimes when you're going through all that hard stuff, it goes back to the hug, doesn't it? It goes back to the wanting someone to tell you that it'll be all right.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and I'm sharing my perspective, knowing that vow to my husband, and I know I'm biased, but he works on himself. He's still working on ourselves individually, so he is into personal development and spiritual development, and not everyone is. So I'm speaking from my experience of having a partner in recovery, but sadly I know from my clients that their partners aren't necessarily working on their self, so can't hold them in their emotions. So with me, it linked to my vulnerability to just let everything out, even the anger, to the point where it was so cute. Like when I had like a little outrage, he would give me the space to share, and then he would say calmly, not in a patronizing way, he would say, is there anything else you need to get out? And then I'll be like, yes. And then
I've got a list.
and then I'd get it all out, and then I'd end up crying, and then he would say, would you like a hug? And I'd be like, yeah. And then he would just hug me. He didn't need to say anything. But that's how amazing he is. And again, not everybody has a partner like that. Another partner might be very triggered, and it might not be helpful in any way, shape or form. But for me, that was supportive, because in all of my emotions, I had to be vulnerable first, because I was a pro at masking everything, as you know. Yeah. Recovery is the opposite to suppression and repression. It's like just allowing yourself to be. So that was my choice first, that I was doing for me in my recovery. And then I had the fear of him witnessing that and being like, oh my God, how can he love me when he's going to see me at my absolute worst? Like you said, like almost like primal crying and sobbing and like raging, but it just strengthens your relationship. It's so hard to be you when all of this is coming out, but if it's met with love, it strengthens and deepens the relationship to just another level. So that was like a huge benefit for us and our relationship through my recovery experience.
Yeah, and like you say, you know, you had somebody who like you say, a coach himself, and so very kind of self-aware, and then able to kind of give you your space. I guess it must be hard for people who are probably going through maybe the worst of their emotions, but have a partner who's trying to hold all the other stuff together. Might have stuff going on of their own, you know, stuff at work or other family problems or whatever. And so, like you say, you know, it might be difficult for other people, even if you've got a partner, because yes, you might get a little bit of kind of support, but ultimately it might be that sometimes those emotions and days when you're really bad might feel really overwhelming for your partner and your family to have to.
And they don't know how to hold you in that. And it's not uncommon that people come to me for coaching, and then, you know, during their recovery, it's clear as day to both them and me that they don't want to be with their partner is not for them anymore. And that's like a huge life thing if they were to decide to step away from that marriage or partnership or relationship. Because I always say, like, when you're working on yourself, when you're growing, when you're healing, if you're with a partner, they either have to be fully accepting and just leave you to it, they're going to get left behind though, or they have to move with you and work on themselves, because you're going to be not far ahead as in better than them. I don't mean that, but if you're working on yourself and your partner isn't, you're not going to be aligned anymore. You're just not. Your values are going to change. Like, what brought you together is not going to keep you there, because you're going to change as a person, as your identity, as your values. So unless the partner's working on themselves, the relation, I don't want to say it's definitely going to end, but you see what I'm saying? Like, you will, in recovery, you will change, you'll come back to your true self, but you are going to change. For example, you're going to stop people pleasing, you're going to ask for your needs to be met, you're going to set boundaries, you're going to say no. Unless the partner's working on themselves, they're going to not like this change of this empowered you.
Yeah.
So that can bring a whole load of stuff into the mix.
Yeah. Well, that brings me on to my next one, which I guess was a pro for me, which was lack of judgment. And when I say that, I mean, you know, like you say, because I didn't have anyone watching me, then the kind of eating the 2 cream horns after dinner, I didn't have to kind of put up with somebody watching or questioning. You know, people, I think, looking into someone in recovery, someone with an eating disorder, kind of see things, they think that, I guess, we should just go back to normal eating, and that means eating like they do. Whereas when you're in recovery, it's a whole different process. You've got lots and lots of eating to catch up on, and you need to eat when you want, what you want, and as much as you want. And that to other people might look a bit strange. So I could have the 2 cream horns, and I could have them in bed, and I could get the pastry onto the quilt, and all of those things without any judgment or anyone saying, you just had one of them, or what do you mean, how can you still be hungry, or should you be eating that much? Or, you know, I guess, and there must be people that experience this, thinking that, like you say, commenting like you're just gonna get really fat. You know, when you see all this kind of, when you're eating according to your needs and your body, and especially if you're going through extreme hunger and what that looks like. So I didn't have to put up with any judgment, and I'm sure actually because whilst as a coach you probably didn't have to put up with that either. Oh, you
I
did?
did.
Oh, good.
It's interesting. It's like you can read my notes. It's so cool how this. You know what I said before we press record? Like this is just going to just go exactly as it should. It's almost as if you've got my notes in front of you, which she hasn't, by the way. Because this was my literal next thing to talk about. That's so crazy. Was a massive con for me that I really struggled with recovery was the judgment. And obviously, Wout as a coach, he's working on himself, and he's still human, and he is a normal eater. And he cares about his health, and he's been led to believe, like the rest of us, that sugar's the devil, and how can it be okay to eat like 500 grams of chocolate every night for months and months and months. So even though he was very supportive of my recovery, they got up to a point where I looked normal because I'd gained weight. I was eating more in the day, I was eating regularly, where I kind of, I guess he assumed that I was just fine now, and I wasn't. I was still going through the reaction to the restriction of binge eating, extreme hunger, like whatever you want to call it. I definitely went through extreme hunger in proper anorexia recovery, but this binge eating it needed to happen. And so I would find myself hiding chocolate from him upstairs. So when he would be downstairs, I would eat it upstairs. When he'd be upstairs, I'd go in the toilet and eat it, because I was dedicated to my recovery, but I also had so much shame around what I was eating, because he was never nasty, but he would always question, like, are you sure? I'm really worried that you're going to get diabetes. Like, I'm really worried you're going to give yourself dementia. And he was being serious, because the amount of sugar I was eating, as you can imagine, in recovery, like that's what happens. He didn't understand it. So the biggest con, I think, for me was he eating in secret until I was like having words with myself from loving compassion, being like, no, what needs to happen is I'm going to speak to Wouter, and my coach helped me with this. Like, I'm going to speak to him and say, look, I know you don't understand. You don't need to understand. You don't need to get it. What I do need from you, though, is to not judge me. I'm not saying you're not allowed to have your own thoughts and opinions. Of course you are. You're your own person. But what I really need from you is whether it's a Monday evening or a Wednesday morning and I'm eating chocolate, just let it be. Don't question it. Just don't say anything. And once I had that conversation, it was then up to me to allow myself, if it was a Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. and I was eating chocolate, to do that in plain sight of him. This was really big, actually a big turning point for my recovery, because we show our nervous system and our brain through our behaviours consistently. So I was showing my nervous system and brain, and my nervous system was freaking the fuck out, thinking, oh my God, he must think I'm so disgusting and weak and all these things because he's seeing me do this. And I was like, no, I'm doing it. I'm just going to allow myself to be seen doing this. And I did. And over time, he just got used to it. It's just, he was still worried about diabetes and whatever for me, but that's his problem, not mine. And I kept doing it. And then during recovery, of course, the extreme hunger starts to dwindle. The chocolate obsession starts to go, and then you kind of eat normally. But if I had still not allowed myself to be witnessed in that, even though it was so hard, like I remember sitting next to him and I had this breathing thing of like, because I was in so much shame and panic that he was seeing me eat all this, but I kind of lovingly made myself just be witnessed in it. That was kind of the end of the turning point in my recovery, where there was no hiding, I guess, anymore. And that was hard when he was there all the time.
I had some experience of that when I go and stay with my dad, because my sister was living with my dad. I had a lot of night hunger, and so I don't understand why you have to get up in the night if you've eaten enough during the day. Then why do you have to get up at night? Like, that's not good for you. It's not good for you to eat late. Very much of the belief, you shouldn't really eat after 5 o'clock. That all just lies in your stomach, and that can't be good for you. And I would do this thing where I would literally try and get up so that nobody. Firstly, because you don't really want to have to wake everyone up just because you're hungry. But actually, like you say, a bit of it was shame. A little bit was everyone thinks I'm I'm mad that I get up and eat food in the middle of the night. And then, like you say, I had to let go of that. And it's like, I'd still try and be quiet so I don't wake everyone up. But that wasn't about hiding the fact that I was getting up to have something to eat.
Yeah.
I had to kind of let go of that and just be like, it won't be forever. But for now, if I'm hungry in the middle of the night, I'm going to get up and I'm going to eat in the middle of the night. And I don't care if you're not supposed to have carbs after 5 o'clock.
It's taking that responsibility, isn't it, and just doing whatever it takes. And it's so hard, especially in a romantic dynamic, when you've got all that shame and stuff. So I guess to help people who are resonating with what we've shared, and again, not all of them will have partners who accept the boundary that I shared, that I set, and he did accept that. But allow yourself to be seen eating. So if that's not with your partner, if you don't feel safe to do that with your partner, go out in public and allow yourself to eat the things that you're ashamed of in front of people, because even if you're allowing all foods but you're hiding the fact you're doing that, you're showing your nervous system that it's actually not safe to do it, even though you're still allowing the food. So it's a really important one that doesn't get talked about enough. That's really hard to do because people do judge you. That's the fucked up thing, they do.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
And the other thing I noticed when I like say if I would go out to eat, and you'll hear people who don't have an eating disorder, but I think it's really important when you're eating the things that you want to eat in the amount that you want to eat it, is that you got to resist that urge to kind of explain it and apologise for it. Because, like you say, you hear it all the time. You go out for dinner with your friends, and you know, one of your friends will go, I'll have dessert, but I shouldn't. That's a bit naughty, and all of that kind of thing. And I used to feel so conscious. This is another thing, one of my pros and cons, because I ate alone most of the time, that I would then feel self-conscious eating in front of other people. I ate alone in my eating disorder, trying to hide the eating disorder, but then when I was doing the opposite, I still felt very self-conscious in front of people for eating the things that I wanted to eat in the amount that I wanted. And so, like you say, you really have to kind of make sure that when you are out amongst people, is to try and get over that feeling of being self-conscious. And if they've got issues with the fact that you've had a starter and a dessert, it's fine. You don't have to apologise for it. You don't have to explain it. You just have it.
You just have it and act as if that you're not bothered. And this brings me to, I shared this in a personal podcast ages ago, when I was this was actually before I started recovery. This was when I was in the binge eating, which of course is a healthy response to restriction. I would go to Tesco, it was before I even moved over here, and I would buy all this stuff for me, only for me, like Ben and Jerry's chocolate sweets, like 30-40 pounds worth. And I would say I had that much shame about it. I would say this was before self-serve checkouts as well, so I had to go to a person, and I would go, I've got the girls coming over. This person didn't even say a single thing to me, probably just doesn't even give a shit what I'm buying. But I had so much oh my god, I'm panicking, what is she thinking? I'd be like, I got the girls coming over, and they'll be like, oh right, have a nice time. And it's literally for me in my own hole of binge eating alone, where nobody knows what I'm doing. So even if you feel like you have to justify it, practice not doing that, because again, your brain and nervous system's watching you. If you're justifying it because you think it's bad and wrong, you're teaching your brain and nervous system that what you're doing is bad and wrong.
I think you have to practice, like you say, whether your scenario where you kind of did feel that judgment, and with me when I went into scenarios where I kind of maybe felt that might get it, I think what you taught me quite early on is boundaries. Like I had a conversation when I told my friends and my family about recovery, that right from the start I was like, look, I know that you're going to want to say things to encourage me and to help me, and you might want to comment on the fact that I look well, and I said, please, at least initially, I said, I don't want any commentary around the changes in my habits. I know what I'm doing. I've got a coach. We're in alignment. We're agreed that everything that I'm doing is the right thing for me. And so please, can I not have your opinion? Unless at some point I might ask for your opinion. But for now, please don't question it, because I know what I'm doing. And just had that boundary in place, just right from the start, to avoid people thinking they were saying the right thing or the helpful thing, when actually that might have been something that triggered me or didn't kind of sit well with me and the plan that we had together.
Oh God, Tara, that's so powerful, and I encourage everyone to do that, because it almost takes that internal pressure off yourself of worried about what they're going to think or do or say, when you say right from the get-go, look, my eating's going to change.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, and you'll probably be pleased about it, but then you might have opinions on how much I'm eating. And I remember I had one girl, Grace, who I worked with, a teenager, and she came to me on a meal plan, so we obviously got her off the meal plan. I remember on the meal plan she was allowed like a moderate piece of cheesecake, and she was saying, but Vic, I want to eat the whole cheesecake. And I'm like, eat the whole cheesecake. And her mum actually had a call with me separately because she lived with her mum. And I was like, it's okay if you see Grace go into the fridge and eating like 4 cheesecakes. I know it sounds ridiculous and irresponsible, but trust me on this, as an expert in eating disorder recovery, act as if it's completely fine, allow it all. And then she did, and then Grace allowed as many cheesecakes as she wanted. Then lo and behold, when her body was ready, she was like, I just want a slice of cheesecake and I'm done. But the NHS, the CAMS, sadly was asking her to write a fucking food log to explain why she emotionally thought she needed to eat the whole cheesecake. And I was like, there's so much wrong with that, I don't even know where to start. That's in anorexia recovery from CAMS. Like, what the fuck? That's another thing. But yeah, I just needed to share that. So it's really important that people around you know your eating's going to change. If they want to have their opinions, they need to keep it to themselves, because especially if you have a coach who know what you're doing. So it's to trust that.
Yeah, people don't question any other kind of if you've got anything else going on medically, any other treatment program that you're going on. But this is, like you say, I think for a lot of people, if they don't understand it, but they don't need to. If you trust the process, so I trusted you, and I knew that you had done this and that you'd gone through it and you knew what you were doing, and so I had to get past the fact that it didn't matter if anyone else understood. They didn't have to understand what was going on.
And that leads me to, I've got 2 points left if we've got just a couple of minutes. If that's
go for it.
One of the points that just leads on nicely is, one of the cons I wrote down was, sometimes you have to educate the other person in what you're doing, and it's exhausting and they don't get it. So we spoke a little bit about this just now, but I did do an episode called, I think the title is How to Support a Loved One in Recovery, and it speaks to the loved one who might be thinking, what the hell is happening with my wife, husband, child, whatever. And so instead of trying to educate the person, send them to podcasts that you know have helped you. That's the best way to educate the person. If this person cares about you enough, they will listen to said podcast episodes to understand what's happening. Because when you're trying to educate someone and you're trying to recover yourself, oh my God, it's just exhausting.
Yeah. And what was your last one before we finish?
The last one was comparison. So even though he was a normal eater, like you so wisely said, I was having to eat more than a normal eater in recovery. I could find myself being like, oh, well, he's gone to the gym and done this body movement and I've not done anything. And he's left 2 bites on his plate, but I want seconds. So even though there was a pro for him to support me eating, there was also a con, because if I allowed it, which I didn't, the eating disorder would have allowed the comparison to like stop me, to hold me back from what I really wanted to do, to rest and to eat more.
Yeah. Anything else you want to cover? I think we've gone through everything. I'm sure other people have different experiences we've not, but
I think there's nothing that we've not naturally spoke about, to be honest. So I think that was and again, I speak from my experience with my partner. Tara speaks from her experience, which will be more widely understood from being by herself. But every partner's different. Yeah. If you have an asshole of a partner, like I did when I was in an abusive relationship, and I said to him about, I'm really uncomfortable in my body, and he made comments like, yeah, well, no wonder I need to keep buying more body moisturizer because your body's just so big, you keep using, or all that type of shit. That's not going to help. And then people aren't in a safe place to leave, and there's so many complications to being in a relationship in recovery and regardless of recovery. So if someone is struggling in the relationship, an eating disorder coach can also help you with that. I mean, obviously we're not therapists and counselors and all of that, but you'll be surprised how much coaching can help you get clarity on your life, what you want, what you don't want, who you are. Like, don't you think like a whole aspect of life stuff that's not just eating related? I think a coach can help with all of that.
Yeah, exactly. I think to end, ultimately, I don't think the grass is greener, particularly on either side, because everyone's recovery is going to be different to everyone else's, so we can compare and think that someone else has it easier or I have it harder. It kind of doesn't matter. We've still got to get on with it as individuals, regardless of what's going on around us and whether that makes it harder or easier. But if you are motivated enough and if you are ready, then you will find ways to get around all of the things we've talked about, all the cons, and you will take full advantage of the pros, and you will still find a way. And like you say, if you're on your own, support is key, either from a coach or someone else, because you're on your own. And also, if you're not on your own, support is key to be able to deal with the cons of being with someone maybe who doesn't always get it.
I mean, wise words to end up that on, Tara, because the grass, I mean, these aren't my wise words, but the grass is always greener when you water it.
Yes.
And you watered your grass and made the most of your situation, and I watered my grass and made the most of my situation. And it goes to ultimate trust that your recovery path is exactly right for you, regardless of whether it's with someone or without someone.
Yeah, exactly. That is a great way to end. Well, thank you so much for your time. Remind everyone, Victoria, where they can find you on social media and for reaching out for support.
Of course, and thank you for having me on. I've really enjoyed this conversation. So victoriakleinsman.com, at the footer of that you've got all my channels, everything you can find, so victoriakleinsman.com and everything from there.
Lovely.
Thanks,
Thank you
Tara.
so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for initiating it. It's been fun.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, listeners.